Good morning, my friends and audience. My name is Edward Wasrom, the tutor in Edwards Academy. This morning, I want us to do a practical approach on dummy variable regression. Recall my previous video. I introduced the intuition behind the dummy variable estimation. So this morning, I want us to look at it by adopting a study approach. Recall that dummy variable regression is a regression analysis that deals with qualitative variables. And in dummy variable, it is required that the explanatory variable or the explained variable are dichotomous in nature. Dichotomous in the sense that they may have two values. So I want us to adopt a study approach this morning where we will look at the impact of exchange rate on economic growth in Nigeria before the SAP period and after the SAP period. SAP is an acronym for Structural Adjustment Program. And Structural Adjustment Program is a policy advice of the International Monetary Fund in Nigeria that was introduced in 1986 with the intention to pull the country out of poverty. But the aftermath of that program is something that Nigerian economy has not recovered until date. Ever since the SAP program was introduced and implemented by the Nigerian federal government, the exchange rate of all the other currencies against the naira has been very, very high, and given that condition, the Nigerian economy has not recovered till date. So this morning I want us to look at it using regression analysis to see how the exchange rate has affected the Nigerian economic growth while considering the impact or the place of the SAP or the Structural Adjustment Program. So flow with me, let's move together. This is my EV worksheet. I've loaded the data I actually want to use in this study. I have my exchange rate, I have my dummy variable, I have my GDP. The dummy variable is coded 0 for periods before the SAP and 1 for period after the SAP. I also have my exchange rate. So the first thing I'm supposed to do, or the study approach this morning, is to estimate the dummy variable using an ordinary OLX. And to have that done, I will now move to quick. From quick, I move to estimate equation. From estimate equation, I will now specify my equation in such a way that the EView can be able to identify it. Recall that my dependent variable is ROGDP, so I will now specify the log value of ROGDP. I will give a space and a constant. I will now specify the exchange rate. I may also decide to log my exchange rate, the log value of the ESR, and my dummy variable. Without changing the method of study, I will leave it at least square. My sample size remains 1981 to 2021. If I hit the OK button, I will be exposed to a result that looks like this. This is a sample of my dummy variable output, my least square output rather, considering the fact that I included a dummy variable in this study. So I will copy it neatly to a PowerPoint or Microsoft Word where we look at it with you. I'll copy it neatly to a Microsoft Word where we can interpret it together. A dummy variable regression is a very simple estimation procedure that researchers can be able to do whenever they find themselves in a study that requires them to use dummy. And the interpretation of dummy variable, like I said previously in my first video, is quite different from the way we interpret other estimations. Like what we have here now, we have a least square estimation using the dummy variable approach, and this estimation was done this day, the 6th day of October 2023. I will have 41 observations in this study. The dependent variable is the log value of ROGDP. We have the alpha 0, which is the C, the constant value. All the parameters of interest are statistically significant because their p-values are less than 5%. Okay, let's move on to interpreting this result. Although I'm not comfortable with this result because the R square is over bloated. The R square of 94% is too high. The W-Watson statistics of less than 1.5 is also too bad, and this evidences the existence of a spurious regression. Though the probability value of the F statistics is okay, but the F statistics value itself is also over bloated. So if I'm to judge the validity of this regression estimate, I can vividly say that there is an evidence of spuriosity in this regression. Spuriosity in the sense that these three indicators, including R square adjusted, is over 93%. But for study purposes, I want us to look at the main reason behind today's study, which is interpreting dummy variable. So let's look at the constant collectively. The C is the autonomous component, which to a very extent could also mean the period before the SAP. This C0 or this C is also known as the alpha 0 in my previous equation. And alpha 0 is used to explain the period before the SAP, while the period after the SAP or the impact of the SAP itself can be computed by adding this 7.060180 to this. And if you add 7.060180 to negative 1.848567, you observe that what you will get will be less than 1. And since your value will be less than 1, it can also be known that the increase or the presence of the structural adjustment program had affected the Nigerian economy positively. Positive in the sense that if you take 7.060180, you add it with negative 1.848569, you are going to get an average of 5.211611, and the coefficient is statistically significant, which implies that the dummy variable has a statistically significant positive impact on ROGDP in Nigeria over the period under investigation. And secondly, we have our exchange rate to be positive and significant, which could also mean that the appreciation of the exchange rate has a positive impact on the economic growth of the country. Although this assumption contradict existing economic a priori, because according to economic theory, an appreciation of the exchange rate will actually increase the domestic production cost, and as such it will reduce productivity because it will dissuade investments drastically. So basically, this is how we estimate and interpret domain variable regression in econometrics using the eView worksheet or system. In my next video, I'm going to consider a more complicated dimension of domain variable regression. Please don't go away. Stay tuned to my channel as I present to you a multiple regression equation that contains more than one domain variable in my next video, and I will also have them interpreted. Thank you and God bless you.